welcome to you all. I am very happy to be here. Hello. And yeah, it would be wonderful if you could turn on your videos, because it just allows us to be even more connected. Yeah, and really glad to be here with you for this practice group, which is really directed at organizational leaders or people who are involved in organization. And we want to explore how we can grow, how we can bring what we're learning in the course to our organizations, and how we can grow trauma-informed architectures. And of course, Thomas will host the last session on healing architectures, especially for organizations. So I'm sure we'll get even more inspiration there. But we're also aware that many of you already work with this and have inspiration to share. And before I go any further, I want to bring to you the warm greetings, very hot greetings from Robin Alfred, who was meant to host the session with me. As many of you will know, Robin is also my husband, and he has COVID at the moment. So he was hoping to do well enough, but he's not yet quite there. So he's really looking forward to the next session, which will be in September. And also sessions beyond that, where we will continue to work on this specific topic. And yeah, I just want to send him our love. He's actually on the call in the background, listening in through phone. So yeah, thank you for being here, Robin. And yeah, I would like to start with a sentence, because I think one of the questions that we've spoken about often already, also during this course, but also that was brought to me again in the meantime, is what do we do if our organization is not open to the word trauma-informed? What do we do when it's really hard to bring these kind of practices to our organization? And I want to start with a quote from the Tao Te Ching, which Thomas loves a lot and teaches from regularly. And I'll also post it in the chat afterwards. But it's verse 78, so as a kind of an inspiration into this session. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice. And I think that's just wanted that little piece. So nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. Yeah, and it's a little just a note that kind of sounds the bell for what we're exploring today. So I would like to start with an attunement, also to allow us to land more in our bodies and our softness with each other. And then we'll do a bit of introduction, some thoughts that I would like to share, insights that Thomas shared with us, just quite short. We'll also produce a handout so that what we'll be sharing today will also be sending to you afterwards. You'll have access to this. And then we would like to do a triad where you get a chance to share about your experience in doing this work, or starting out on the journey, and then we'd like to learn from you. So we would, really invite you to then use the chat, bring your knowledge in, and then also bring your insights into the space for sharing. And we want to continue working with this because, at the moment, the trauma-informed guidelines that are out there are usually developed by organizations that solely focus or mainly focus on individual trauma and are more focused in the area of care provision. So really building something that is cohesive and that might support us is also of great interest to all of us, growing from this body of work. Yeah, so we'll start with an attunement, and this is also our way to deepen our community of practice here. And yeah, I think the community of practice is also a super important step as we bring this to our organizations. So just take a moment to close your eyes, maybe, or relax them if that's more comfortable for you. And take a moment to soften your breath. And allow your breath to soften your presence more deeply into your body. Maybe just starting by how comfortable that is. For you to land more deeply into your body, to allow your breath to lead you more deeply into your body. Deepening into your power of presence here and now. Noticing how your subtle awareness within your body refines as you start to focus on it. And noticing where there is flow, comfortable settling into your base, into your feet, into embodiment, maybe also comfortable settling of this body into the planet. A rooting. Yeah, and you might also notice the parts in your body where there is elements of stress, lifting out. And see whether you can increase your care for those parts. Often in our everyday life, we want to push them away because they're a bit uncomfortable. And just see whether you can bring more love and care to the aspects of your body where there is a lifting out or stress that is active. And just coming more home to our body and becoming more aware of what is alive in our body increases the possibility for coherence within us. That body and words, being, expression might become more aligned. But let's add the layer of emotions to it. And often we can access those through our heart center. And even the topic we're speaking to today, bringing these practices, bringing trauma-informed leadership to your community, your organization, might trigger an emotion in you. Feelings, emotional response. Just take a moment to notice that. And it's beautiful to be aligned in this community, that we wish to be too supportive to each other. There is an intention to build this community of practice that is doing this work. And that we allow the emotions that might be alive in us around this topic to be here and to embrace them. You know, we might also have thoughts and insights and intellectual knowledge around this topic. Let's just see whether we can, in a way, allow our brains and our insight, our thoughts to settle more deeply into our embodiment so that we become one being, body, mind, and emotions, that is gently embraced by our witnessing presence here and now. And from this, we might gently open our eyes. Take a moment to relate to this group intention and come to the I feel you feeling me practice. So if possible, wonderful if you can turn on your video. And I just want to acknowledge also, that there are 63 of us here. It's the beginning of summer holiday for many. It's a heat wave in Europe, and we're here. So there is a gratitude for our commitment, turning up. And, maybe you want to just choose one video for now. You can also decide to go to the three little dots and pin the person in the top right corner of their video, or you can just stay on the gallery view and just choose one person and notice what it's like for your nervous system to feel yourself feeling someone else, feeling someone else. And we've been practicing this for a while now, so we can already notice that the practice is becoming more fluid. And you might want to move to someone else. Maybe there's a noticing that the specificity of this nervous system, attuning, sensing, is different from the first nervous system, that there's a slight diversity here in the group, a richness, a wealth that we bring together. Yeah, and then we just open our awareness to sense our space. And also realize that this is also a community, an organization that we're connected to in a way. And we are here community of practice, and that's helpful, that this is a resource for bringing trauma-informed leadership to our organizations, that we can come back to this community. Yeah, and just a few things also that were said in some of the past sessions, but maybe to crystallize it a bit more. Before we go there, I also just want to say that because Robin couldn't be here, we do have a resourcing team here with us. And I specifically want to thank B. James, who's here. She's often on the call. She's part of our official assistance team. So offering support and holding, and just glad that you're here with us, B. Thank you. And of course, Anna Folborn is also here just to help us hold the tech. Yeah, so what we've said in all cases, because people have said, my organization really isn't open for this work. And other people have said, actually, we're ready. We want to start implementing this more explicitly. But in all cases, what we start with is ourselves as instrument. We are the main tool that we bring into our organizations in all cases. And Thomas started speaking about that, how each of us becomes an acupuncture point. And it's our authenticity as leaders, our willingness to bring vulnerability, to bring our presence, our relating, our care into our organization that is the beginning. That we become an acupuncture point for what Thomas called intra-being rather than intra-being. That we bring system sensing, relational sensing to all of our team meetings, our meetings with individuals in our organizations. Yeah, and that from there, we can start to build a network, create a network with like-minded people in our organization. That we might need to start carefully, really see, who can I speak to this about? And I really vividly remember, because for many years I was leading the Global Eco-Village Network, and I was exactly wondering, well, how do I bring this work to the work in the Global Eco-Village Network? Can I speak about trauma directly? How do I do that? And yeah, but starting to build a network with the people who are open so that we can become an immune system response together. Yeah, and in that, I think this growing a community of practice is a really strong ingredient. And Thomas said, that it's important for us as we want to bring change to build our tribe of support and also to co-create, communities of practice maybe on different levels. One might be a more intimate circle where I can actually experience a space where I can soften and melt myself. And one might be more building communities of practice in the broader team, where we start building spaces for deeper sharing and empowerment and care and honesty and trustworthiness and safety. Yeah, and then as this immune system response, we might slowly but surely detoxify the domination hierarchies that are there. And Thomas spoke about liquefying rather than going against. And that we say, if we say, you have to start implementing trauma-informed leadership guidelines now, that we might create a very thick layer of resistance in our specific organization, so that, we need to see, where are we? How can we start melting the relatedness in our organizations towards more competence-based related hierarchies that become more able to integrate external structures and practices as well. And that also includes liquefying the fear that might come up in myself as I bring this change. Many of us also spoke about language. What is the kind of language that works in my organization, in my context? So in this context, we use this language that is also very inspired by Thomas, around individual, ancestral, and collective trauma as an interrelated whole, a co-emerging wholeness. I'm currently working on trauma-informed guidelines here in the Findhorn Foundation where I live. And there we frame it more as health and wellness policy. I just ran a trauma-informed leadership course here, but we actually frame it as health and wellness policy. And we find that allows it to land much easier. And so what is the language we can use? And yeah, once we have these things in place, like a community of practice, and I really have the work within myself in place, so it's like the inner community of practice, then we can start doing the outer work, the work on the structures, on the policy levels, really implementing a set of values, a set of guidelines, a policy. And in that place, let me just ask you for a moment, like, we sent out the Pocket Project values, and we sent out the Trauma-Informed Leadership Course community guidelines. And my question to you is, and maybe you could just raise your hand, how many of you read those? And you can also maybe raise hand in the bottom where there's a button that you can lift, that we just said, how many of you read those and are aware of them and actually feel like you remember them as you come to the group meetings or as you relate in your triads? Yeah, cool. So this is like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 12 of, okay, we're becoming more. Well done. Well, I'm very impressed and I'm very proud. And this is probably a typical kind of percentage, you know, that 10 to 12% in an organization, maybe 20% will actually go and read a policy and read the guidelines. And it's really hard to get people to read it, to go back to it. It's also not easy to keep values and policies and guidelines alive, updated. You know, so often the co-creation of the values and the guidelines is actually the most impactful part of the process, right? So to be really clear that these external structures, they need to be constantly brought to life. And, you know, we do have these values and guidelines, and we'll send it out again in the, yeah, exactly, read a bit, then forgot about them again. I'm the same. I created those guidelines, you know, and I couldn't tell you exactly what is in them. I read them today and I actually thought, oh, these are lovely, you know, but yeah, so there's something about the creation process of structures that is incredibly powerful. And to involve as many people in your organization into that is very powerful. But also then to go back and to update them together. And Robin has actually written an article that we would like to share with you afterwards, which is about this, you know, that values and policies only make sense if they're actually practiced. So it brings us back to that community of practice. So ideally, we start building a community of practice. From that, we develop the guidelines, the policies, the values. And then we need rapid feedback loops within the community. We need to install it, you know, and the old language for this could be grievance procedure, complaints procedure. You know, I'm not sure whether that's exactly the right word, but that there is a quick feedback loop around where are we actually implementing the guidelines and the values, and where is there still work to do. And I loved how Thomas spoke. I don't know whether it was in the last module or not, but about, yes, it was, how when we can bring the places, you know, we were speaking about how modern slavery might play a role in organizations, and how if an organization has the courage to transform what might be a mistake into co-learning, a space for co-learning, that's an amazing learning process for everyone, and a major motor for transformation. Yeah, so these 3 steps really, you know, implementing trauma-informed leadership in my way of being, in my role in the organization. And I can tell you, you know, as CEO of the Pocket Project, I can say that's strong work. How do I become vulnerable as a leader? How do I build a team in which this is being practiced? So a lot of learning happening constantly. How do I take the feedback in that comes back, you know, especially from people of color, global majority people? Oh, you know, we're not feeling safe enough, we're not feeling involved enough, for instance, or any other feedback that we might be getting. Yeah, then to build the community of practice. So how within a team, within an organization, within the networks of support for me and my leadership, how can I build communities of practice around me? And then how can I start bringing this internal practice into external structures that are visible, that can be read up on, that we can be called to duty on, saying, look, you're writing this in your values, but are you living this? And I didn't feel that in this particular situation. Yeah, and with that, the work is really to shift from trauma informed to trauma sensitive, to trauma integrating organizations, and then towards organizations that work on restoration. And a very simple way also of framing this work is that we're creating pockets of healing that start to digest pockets of trauma. Yeah, and we would say, that the trauma informed is really to become, to realize how impactful trauma is. Then trauma sensitive is to become more and more able to recognize the symptoms of trauma and to actually not just on an intellectual level, but on the level of sensing and relating. And the two trauma integration is where the work goes deeper. And I think, in a way, there might be pockets of that happening in an organization, but to really become trauma integrating as an organization, I believe you need to have those external structures in place as well. Yeah, and lastly, I think the rest I would really like to bring into the handout. So we have some links to existing guidelines out there in mainstream, 6 guiding principles of trauma-informed approach, 3 guiding principles for the trauma-informed approach. So we'll be sharing this with you, but I think, often when we go to that too early, it's not as effective. So with this, I would love us to, and I'd love to then come to these, to your question also, Paula. That's a beautiful question. Maybe we can bring that into the sharing afterwards. And right now, I'd love to move to the triads, and I'd just like to introduce the topic that we're going to, the question that we're going to look at. So you're invited to look at, where are you in this process in your organization? And you might be working in a community, in an NGO, whatever level you're working on. But where are you in this process? Are you really focusing currently on working within yourself as a leader or a growing leader? Are you focusing on growing a community of practice in your community or your team, your organization? Are you currently developing structures, developing policy in your organization? What have you tried so far in this process in your organization? What language has been helpful? And what might be next steps? Yeah, and just remember that in these triads, we'll really use this as a exploration together, kind of a research into the expertise that sits here in the room. So the triads are not a 3-way conversation. They're really a space to offer each person an uninterrupted time to speak. Also, I want to say now, in case you're for whatever reason not able to participate in the triads, we will continue here in the main room in 24 minutes, so you can come back then. But each person to have uninterrupted time deeply witnessed by the others. And often when we do that, we can uncover deeper layers of awareness within ourselves and each other. And it's also not a space for feedback to each other. It's more a space for practice feeling each other more deeply. You will have 1 minute to arrive and then 6 minutes each to share. And then also at the end, we'll have 2 minutes just to complete together. And we'll send the timing and notifications to you to guide you through the process. So you don't need to keep time yourself. And please understand that you might end up in a group of 2. If so, that is a gift of the universe to you, and you just have a bit more time, and you can just share the time between you. It's always so lovely to see people returning from the triads with a smile on their face and a warmth and relatedness and expansiveness. So lovely to see that in you as you are returning. Yeah, wonderful. We just had 2 people showing up an hour late. It's just because our course sessions start an hour later. I think that's what happened there. So welcome back, everyone. I hope that was inspiring, interesting. Also listening to yourself, is also often very surprising. And it would be great actually if you could write some of your findings in the chat. And we will save this because, I think one of the most important things is that this is leading edge work. And doing leading edge work, the community of practice is the most important aspect. It's like the chrysalis effect, in a butterfly, that the cells that transform the caterpillar to the butterfly need to connect for the butterfly to emerge. It's a really important part while the caterpillar cells fragment a bit. So, where are you in the process? And also, what language has been helpful for you? What are your next steps? If there's anything about that you would like to bring into the chat, and we can also share this afterwards, so that others can see where you are. And over time, we would like to both build a peer review possibility, so where you as peers can continue to support each other in triads and other formats. But also, as the Pocket Project, we're also growing consultancy and supervision possibilities, with support from Thomas, to support organizations that are and communities and countries that are governments that are wanting to bring these kind of practices, trauma-informed practices, to their regions, countries, organizations, communities. Yeah, and with that, I would love to open here for you to continue writing, and in parallel also, if you have a question or you would like to share an insight online, to please raise your hand, the raise hand button. And we had some question earlier. Yeah, if you'd like to come. Yeah, Tamara, let's start with you.
Hi. Oh, thank you.
Brilliant. I can hear you.
I know. That was unexpected to be called on so quickly. I was not prepared, but here I am.
This is different from the big group.
I know.
Yeah.
My question is, I am a team leader of training for a relatively small nonprofit in New York State. And we do have trauma-informed training and practice. And New York State also has sexual harassment prevention mandatory training that we deliver all the time. And we have talked about how to help people hear the ways in which their behavior might be landing in ways that are unsafe for some people. How do you hear that, have that feedback loop? And also, how do you deliver that information so that we build a community that can talk about things that have gone unspoken for a really long time? My question is about parts of the agency who say, yes, we believe in trauma-informed practice and we understand that trauma underlies many things that happen, and that doesn't affect me because I never act those ways. So that disconnect between, yes, this is a possibility, however, I am not someone that engages in racist or sexist or classist practices, and what kind of language makes that easier for people to be vulnerable with or open up to, and be able to transform that piece of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's in a way, it's a very deep question, right? Because it goes right to the place of our self-protective mechanisms. You know, we're as leaders to, or as agency employees, or as your group working with agency employees, to have a deep understanding for how existentially threatening it can be to be questioned in these areas, and how strong and fast the self-protective mechanisms are that come online. And, I'm remembering nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for the dissolving, the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. So to really watch that, and of course, one of the most beautiful, it's finally raining here in Scotland. We've needed rain for weeks. So thank you for the blessing. So, as I watch someone not being able, maybe witness in your role, someone not being able to take in the feedback, how do I respond? Because I notice, and maybe all of us notice that even though I'm very quick to see that in others, when the feedback comes to myself, I can have a very strong self-protective mechanism that comes online, and to catch myself and watch. So how much compassion do I bring to myself, and from that place to others? And also then, again, I love this courage, the word courage, organizational courage or personal courage. And we need that if we do this work, to sit in the zones of discomfort and to become more and more able to take in quick feedback loops that teach us, and I really feel like I'm sitting in that myself in my role in the Pocket Project. How do I become receptive to quick feedback loops? So in the end, it comes back to that, I need to work on myself, on the deepest levels of childhood attachment traumas, that help me integrate my resistance. Then I can become softer and, and probably more creative with others who have that. And I'll give another example, because some of you might be interested in coming to the White Affinity Group on Thursday, which is actually just in 2 days, and being, being, that's an area where, also coming from South Africa, it's a really deep work, how do we look at white privilege? So it's also a place where we can take this exploration further.
I liked what you said about the really remembering that these are defenses, and for me, there are times when I can be curious about the experience that's under the defense, and when I can provide enough safety and be curious enough and outside of my own reactions enough to create a space for an exploration of those lived experiences that give rise to those defenses. That's something that's been useful. And it's a good reminder that I can't always go there because of my own very quick reactivity, that it really does just come so fast. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I also just sit with a question around when we're protecting somebody, when this happens and we're actually protecting the other person, how to hold that protection and care for both parties, and what is, how to balance that coming from a long time of systems of oppression.
All of this,
Yeah, thank you for bringing that
Thank
topic
you.
up, Tamara, and embodying this. Great, thank you. Yeah, anybody else who would like to share something or bring a question? I'll just come back to the gallery view to see you all. Oh, Paula. Hi.
Hi, I was waiting until you see me on the screen.
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to share not directly about the organizations, but something that I just realized yesterday, replaying the last session of last Tuesday, when I was looking at the video of leadership and team resilience. When I went through the replay, I realized that, for example, now, maybe we can extrapolate organizations, state, country. That, for example, here I'm from Barcelona, Spain, and as you know, in Europe and all over the world, but in Spain specifically, the work situation and the work situation, the inflation and everything is really bad here. And I follow some economists that, they are exposing how we can come out of this, let's say, crisis or situation, and how can we go further and improve in this technology revolution. And something came into my mind like, here it's there is a big issue, because
There is what?
There is a big issue, a big problem, a big situation regarding the polarization, separation, and a big trauma feeling, because according to what we are learning here, if we don't process all this trauma, we cannot move on, we cannot be creative, we cannot be resourceful, we cannot improve. And I realized that here it's a big thing. And I was thinking, how can I help? How can I share my learnings? And it's something that I just connected the dots, like, okay, if we are traumatized, if we are living in the past, if we are still living or doing the same things as 45 years ago when we have the dictatorship, how are we going to improve? It's impossible. And we are really stuck on that because our governments and our state, they are very much polarized. and then there is so much separation, and it came into my mind. I thought, what can be done?
Beautiful, Paula. So, firstly, also in you, it's very lovely to feel your caring heart.
Thank you.
And just to breathe that in for a moment, that you care and we care. And you're speaking about Spain. And I think in some way we could all speak about our own countries, speaking about increase of crisis, sense of crisis and polarization, and also the fact that the fragmentation and polarization sits on history that has not been integrated, and really it, as Thomas said last time, if we really look at the scars that crisscross the planet, they move everywhere. And it's been a long time waiting. So it's like we've been waiting for a long time for this moment where humanity starts waking up to the fact that we actually need to do the work to face the trauma and start integrating it. And I feel you're speaking about the dream of bringing collective trauma integration and trauma-informed policy structures to countries, not to organization, but to countries. And I know that Thomas dreams of this. So he often says, in each constitution, it should be a part of the constitution that a part of the national resources is dedicated to collective trauma integration. And just to say, the closest we've come to that at the moment so far is that we just had a process in Germany where we work with More Democracy, a beautiful NGO that is doing citizens' assemblies that are influencing. So they're working with parliamentarians and politics, and the Pocket Project together. We did a collective trauma integration process with 500 people. And we'll be continuing that work in Germany. The next level will be to specifically look at East-West integration, for instance. So this is possible. It's possible to start that work. And the beautiful thing is that it brings agency back to citizens. For many citizens that can no longer find themselves in the normal pathways that are open for political expression, like voting in a democracy that is extremely polarized, that it becomes like a third side for citizens to start engaging. So I would like to embrace your dream and, have your back in believing that this can come to Spain, and maybe we can work together on this with people on the course in the future. But even there, to say, it needs to start like with the self, with building a community of practice in Spain, looking at, okay, how can we start building the right partnerships that are strong enough to make this into a process. Yeah.
Coach, I would like to share with you all regarding to what you were saying. There was this film, a Spanish film director, Iciar Boyain, who made a beautiful movie, which is called My Chabel. I don't know if you saw it, which was a movie to integrate. When I saw the movie, it was so touching because it was about, our military conflict within Basque Country and Castilla, and I thought, why can we not do more things like this?
Exactly. That's exactly the other side to what I just said. On the one hand, like if we want to do an official like on that level, we need to wait a long time to, or maybe not long, but it could go fast to grow a community of practice. We could move much faster than we think. However, people are just asking that you type the name of the movie in the chat, so please do. But also, art is such a powerful tool. And, the co-founder of the Pocket Project, Judith Sasportas, Thomas's wife, is an artist who works exactly in this area. And I think there are many ways in which we can become creative. If you feel that care in your heart now, that you presence it, you relate around it, and you also ask, maybe in your attunements, your meditations, for creative guidance. What is the next step for you now? And it might be surprise you. Yeah.
I will do that.
But thank you for your care. And also you bring a lot of grounding, how you speak about it, and also for bridging language from Spanish to English. I really appreciate that.
Thanks to you.
Yeah.
Thanks to you all.
Blessings on your dream. You're walking. Yeah. Thank you. And we'll go to Oya.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Oya.
I kind of want to follow up to the last speaker. In my experience, people I talk to, and they're open to the subject, they very quickly get into this overwhelm because they get a small sense of the problem of their own work that they might be doing, of their own generational trauma. I mean, I'm in Germany. And then there's this overwhelm, and then the next step is very hard. And I have my next job, and I need you guys helping me, is I want to pack small packages in which those who I speak to about the subject can feel the empowerment that is also in this game.
Yeah.
It's not just witnessing the dread of human presence on this planet, but I think the sensory tools that are, of course, culturally taken away from us to see that caring works are taken away, and we have to find language, we have to practice. Sometimes they're in the female realm, and when you bring it up to any realm of authority or citizen space, there's either no vocabulary or everybody acts as if it didn't exist or if it didn't matter. So for me, it's very important to have this group so that I can speak about my experiences and everybody watches and says, yes, it's true. This is an experience, because I feel my surroundings that I'm in as a very lonely worker, that they want to annihilate my positive experiences so that I go back to my old role of being a caring woman, but being silent of that care and about the aftermath of that care and what it actually would mean for society if that care would speak out loud.
Yeah, and let's just take a moment to presence your emotions around this. Yeah, that it's touched you very deeply. And it touches you very deeply. And I want to honor your courage that you're also sharing this vulnerability with us. Yeah, and, really recommit to our commitment to also build a community of practice. with the Pocket Project. Yeah, and one thing that I actually wanted to share briefly anyway is that my experience in working here with the Findhorn wider community and the foundation, Findhorn Foundation, this community here in Scotland that we live in, which is quite a big group of people, like around up to, let's say, 600 to 1,000 people. The borders are a bit fluid, but that I found that it's really helpful to look at what is the language that is already being used here. And I realized that here in the area, in the last years, there have been a few suicides, and therefore mental health is a huge topic here. And that mental health and wellness is really like an entrance door where there's already some work that is being done around how can we notice if somebody is going into a form of mental ill health that really needs more support, and what are the societal structures that I can bring on that, like, okay, that's the individual level of health and wellness, and how can we also take care of collective health and wellness? And then people understand it and they become super interested in the collective aspect of health and wellness, So I think it's so, and that's also why there is not one pathway towards bringing this in, that we all, just as you said, need to see, how do I relate this in my environment and the people that I'm connecting to and my workspace? And yeah, what is the language that I might be able to relate to? What are the communities of practice that I might be able to build? And yeah, how does, and I think it's beautiful that you said that one of the communities of practice is this community here, And what we do here is a deep dive. With Thomas, it will never be anything else but a deep dive. This is the deep dive, and it's actually the resourcing that we need to also then move in very agile and creative ways into the environments that we work in. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Oya. Thank you so much for bringing this. And I mean, you turned off your video, but I just feel like if you do want to turn it on again, just that we end by really sending also a heartfulness to you and a blessing. Yeah, thank you. And with that, let's come back to the gallery view just to Leah, we're not going to have time, but you can put your question in the chat, and who knows, it might just come into the next module. You never know. But yeah, thank you, everybody. And I want to thank you. Somebody just said this group is a powerful resource. I agree with that. And I want to thank you also for the learning that you're bringing to the Pocket Project. So this is a two-way learning process, and I feel deeply grateful for this. So looking forward to continuing to learn together. Yeah, and I just want to again just share a little bit about the richness of the upcoming sessions in the coming weeks. Yeah, and this is great, Mohammed. Also, if you continue writing these small pieces, we will also collate that in the chat about who you are, what you're working on, what your next steps are. So we'll have a second session for us organizational leaders with Robin hopefully next time on 14th of September, same time as today. So it's an hour earlier than our usual training sessions. We'll have a white-bodied affinity group at the same time as today, where we will explore how white privilege might unconsciously affect our leadership. We're, of course, especially interested in the areas that are on that edge between unconsciousness and consciousness. And the group is really for all of us who have less skin pigmentation, and we just want to explore together how this might have brought privilege into our lives and also influenced how we see the world. Yeah, and you don't need to be fully white to join this call. But we're really wanting to especially support our friends who have suffered from racism and especially unconscious bias by becoming more aware ourselves. Then I want to invite you next Monday. We'll have a special global social witnessing call, which will be on the war in the Ukraine. And this will be Ukrainians who are part of our course sharing about their experience currently of being in a war situation. So, even though it's not a part of our course, I would just invite Anna again to share the sign-up link for that. You have to sign up for it separately on the Pocket Project website to be invited to that. Yeah, then on that's next Monday, the 25th of July. Then next Tuesday, we have the next module with Karen Sims on racialized trauma and resilience. So it's also great that we have the White Affinity group and hopefully arrive with some pre-awareness. And Karen will offer a very powerful session. I'm sure last year it was brilliant. And then following that, on July 31st, we'll have another global majority affinity group. So that's for the people who have more skin pigmentation or a very direct relationship to Indigenous roots. Yeah, and lastly, we'll have our first integration session on August 2nd. So very soon after that, where we'll be recapping some of the course content, and then we'll go into English, German, Spanish, and Ukrainian practice groups to deepen that. Beautiful. Thank you all for being here, and appreciating your work in the world very much. The soft overcomes the hard, and the gentle overcomes the rigid. Yeah. Thank you, and go well.